The arrival of the alien threat. On a beautiful planet called Varanthia, the skies were a deep blue, and the trees glimmered with bright colors. The people of Varanthia lived peacefully, guided by their wise and kind princess, Seraphina. She was known for her bright smile and gentle heart. Seraphina loved her people and worked hard to keep them safe. The Varanthians celebrated every day, enjoying their music, dance, and the beauty of their land. One sunny morning, as the princess walked through the gardens, she felt a strange change in the air. The flowers seemed to droop, and the birds stopped singing. Seraphina paused, a feeling of unease creeping into her heart. She rushed back to the palace to consult with her advisors. "Your Highness," one advisor said, his face pale, "we have received troubling news. A powerful enemy fleet is approaching our planet. They destroy everything in their path." Seraphina's heart raced. She had heard stories of these ruthless invaders. The Zarkans. They were known for their dark ships and fierce warriors. The princess gathered her people in the grand hall. She looked into their worried faces and spoke, "We must stand together. Our strength lies in our unity. We will prepare to defend our home." The Varanthians cheered, but deep down, Seraphina felt fear. She knew they were outnumbered. As the sun set, the sky turned a fiery red, warning of the coming storm. Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed through the air. Seraphina rushed outside and looked up. Dark ships blotted out the stars, descending upon Varanthia like shadows. Panic spread among the people as the Zarkan fleet landed, their ships hissing and smoking. "Everyone, to the palace," Seraphina commanded. The people ran, but some were too slow. The Zarkan warriors stormed the streets, capturing anyone they could find. The princess fought to stay calm, rallying her guards to protect her people. Just then, a loud explosion shook the ground. A Zarkan ship had fired upon the palace. The walls trembled, and dust filled the air. Seraphina's heart sank as she saw her people being taken away, their cries echoing in the chaos. The fear in her heart grew stronger. "We must fight back," she shouted to her guards. "We cannot let them take our home." But deep down, she knew they were not strong enough. The Zarkans were relentless, and their numbers were overwhelming. In the midst of the battle, Seraphina noticed a small child hiding behind a tree, tears streaming down her face. The princess rushed to her side, kneeling down to comfort her. "It's okay, little one. I will protect you," she said, her voice soft yet strong. But as she looked around, her heart sank. For every child she saved, many more were captured. As night fell, the battle raged on. The princess and her guards fought bravely, but they were losing ground. Seraphina felt despair creeping in. "What can we do?" she whispered to herself. Then, a memory flashed in her mind, an ancient prophecy spoken by the elders. It told of a human warrior who would come to save Varanthia in its darkest hour. Seraphina shook her head, dismissing the thought. "Humans, they are just stories," she said softly, but hope flickered within her. She knew humans were strong, and the tales of their bravery traveled across the stars. Perhaps it was time to believe. As the fighting continued, Seraphina decided to send a message for help. She called for her fastest messenger. "Go, find the nearest human colony and tell them we need aid. Tell them we are on the brink of destruction." The messenger nodded, fear and determination in his eyes, and raced into the night. With her people in danger, Seraphina looked to the sky, hoping for a miracle. "Please," she prayed, "bring us help. We cannot lose our home." As dawn broke, the sun rose over the smoldering remains of the city. The Zarkans continued to capture the Varanthians, and the princess felt the weight of despair on her shoulders. Just then, she spotted something unusual in the sky. A small bright object was heading toward Varanthia. Her heart raced as it drew closer. Could this be the help she had prayed for? As the object landed with a thud, the princess gathered her remaining guards. They were ready to face whatever came next. The doors of the small craft opened, and out stepped a figure clad in armor. The figure was human, tall and strong, with a determined look in his eyes. Serafina felt a rush of hope. This could be the warrior from the prophecy. "Who are you?" she called out, her voice shaking with both fear and hope. The human soldier stepped forward, his face serious yet kind. "I am Alex, a soldier from Earth. I have come to help you." Serafina's heart soared. Perhaps together they could save Varanthia. As the sounds of battle echoed around them, she knew this was only the beginning of a fight for survival. The princess and the human soldier stood side by side, ready to face the darkness together. The mysterious human soldier. As the dust settled around the newly arrived human soldier, Princess Serafina felt a mix of hope and curiosity. Alex, the soldier from Earth, was unlike anyone she had ever met. His presence was strong and commanding, yet there was a warmth in his eyes that eased some of her fear. The sounds of battle echoed in the distance, but for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. "Your Highness," Alex said, his voice steady and clear, "I've heard your call for help. I'm here to fight for your people." Serafina studied him closely. His armor was scratched and worn from battles fought, and he carried a weapon that seemed to hum with energy. She felt an instant connection, a sense that they were allies in a dire time. "Thank you for coming," Serafina replied, her voice trembling slightly. "We are in great danger. The Zarkans are relentless, and we are outnumbered." She gestured toward the chaos surrounding them, where her people were still struggling against their captors. The sight filled her with a sense of urgency. "Let's not waste any time," Alex said, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the battlefield. "We need to gather your forces and come up with a plan." Serafina nodded, grateful for his decisiveness. Together, they moved quickly toward the palace, where the remaining guards had gathered, ready to defend their home. Once inside the grand hall, Serafina called for a meeting. The guards and advisors looked at Alex with a mix of skepticism and awe. "This is Alex, a soldier from Earth," she announced, her voice firm. "He has come to help us. We need to unite and strategize our defense against the Zarkans." The guards exchanged glances, unsure of how a single human soldier could make a difference. "But how can he help us?" one guard questioned, his brow furrowed. "We are fighting an entire fleet." Alex stepped forward, unafraid. "I may be just one soldier, but I come from a planet where we face our own battles every day. I know how to fight, and I can teach you." His confidence was contagious, and the guards began to listen more closely. Serafina felt her spirits lift. "We can learn from him. We need every advantage we can get." With Alex's guidance, they began discussing tactics. He explained the importance of teamwork and strategy, and the guards quickly adapted, eager to learn from their new ally. For the next few hours, Alex trained the Varanthian guards, showing them how to fight as a unit. They practiced formations, learned to use their weapons more effectively, and discovered the power of combining their strengths. Serafina watched with admiration as Alex's leadership transformed her people from frightened individuals into a cohesive fighting force. As the training continued, Serafina found herself growing closer to Alex. They exchanged stories during breaks, sharing laughter and experiences from their vastly different worlds. Alex spoke of Earth's battles and victories, while Serafina shared tales of her people's traditions and their connection to the land. She marveled at how much they could learn from each other. But time was running out. The sounds of the Zarkan forces grew louder as they pushed deeper into Varanthia. The princess could feel the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "We need to act before it's too late," she said, turning to Alex. "What should we do next?" Alex's expression turned serious. "We should plan a counterattack. We can't wait for them to come to us. If we strike first, we can catch them off guard." Serafina nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "Let's gather our best fighters and prepare for an ambush." They quickly assembled a team of the bravest guards and civilians willing to fight. Alex explained the plan. They would lure the Zarkan forces into a narrow valley, where they would have the advantage of numbers and surprise. Serafina felt a rush of adrenaline as they prepared to defend their home. As night fell, they'd moved into position. The stars twinkled above, illuminating the valley where the ambush would take place. Serafina stood next to Alex, her heart racing. "Do you really think we can win?" she asked, uncertainty creeping in. Alex turned to her, his gaze steady. "I believe in you and your people. You have the strength to fight for what you love. Remember, courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to face it." Serafina felt inspired by his words. She realized that this human soldier had not only come to help, but had also ignited a fire within her. As the Zarkan forces approached, Serafina and her team readied themselves. The air was thick with tension, and the sounds of the enemy grew louder. She could see the dark figures moving closer, their eyes glinting in the moonlight. Her heart raced, but she knew she had to be brave. "On my signal," Alex whispered, raising his hand. Serafina nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The moment felt surreal. The fate of her people rested on this attack, and she was ready to fight alongside her newfound ally. "Now," Alex shouted, and the Varinthian fighters erupted from their hiding places, launching their ambush on the unsuspecting Zarkans. The battle had begun, and Serafina felt a sense of purpose. With Alex by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next, determined to protect her home and her people. The battle for Varenthia. The night air crackled with tension as the Varinthian fighters surged forward, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the war drums echoing in the distance. The Zarkans, caught off guard by the sudden attack, hesitated for a moment. It was the perfect opportunity. Princess Serafina stood at the forefront, her sword gleaming in the moonlight, her eyes fierce with determination. "Push forward," she cried, her voice ringing out over the chaos. "We fight for our home." The Varinthian warriors roared in response, their spirits lifted by her words. They charged at the Zarkan forces, who scrambled to regroup. Alex led the charge beside Serafina, his movements swift and precise. He fought with a grace that surprised even the most skilled Varinthian warriors. As the two forces clashed, the sounds of metal against metal rang out like thunder. Serafina fought valiantly, her sword cutting through the darkness. She remembered Alex's training, staying close to her comrades, and defending each other against the onslaught. The Zarkans were powerful, but the element of surprise gave the Varinthians an edge. In the midst of the battle, Serafina caught sight of the Zarkan commander, a towering figure clad in dark armor. He moved with authority, barking orders at his troops. The sight of him sent a chill down her spine. If they could take him down, it might turn the tide of the battle. "Follow me," she shouted to Alex, determination fueling her steps. Together, they maneuvered through the fray, their blades striking down Zarkan warriors as they advanced toward the commander. The chaos around them faded into the background. All that mattered was reaching their target. The commander noticed them too late. Serafina and Alex lunged forward, a well-timed strike that caught him off guard. The two fought fiercely, the sound of clashing swords echoing in their ears. The commander fought back, his strength formidable, but Serafina's resolve was unbreakable. With one final powerful strike, Serafina managed to land a blow against the commander. He stumbled, momentarily losing his footing. Seizing the opportunity, Alex delivered a swift kick, sending the commander crashing to the ground. The Zarkan soldiers faltered as their leader fell, uncertainty creeping into their ranks. "Now's our chance," Alex yelled, rallying the Varinthian fighters. They pressed forward, taking advantage of the Zarkan's confusion. Serafina felt a rush of adrenaline, her heart soaring as the tide began to shift. But just as victory seemed within reach, the ground shook violently. A massive Zarkan warship descended from the skies, its engines roaring as it landed with a thud. The ship's doors opened, revealing more Zarkan soldiers armed with advanced weapons. "Retreat," one of Serafina's guards shouted, panic evident in his voice. But Serafina refused to give in to fear. "No, we fight," she declared, her voice steady and strong. She could see the determination in her people's eyes, the fire ignited by their unexpected ally. Alex turned to her, urgency in his gaze. "We need to regroup. If we don't, we'll be overwhelmed." He was right. They couldn't let the battle escalate further. "Fall back to the palace," Serafina ordered. "We'll make our stand there." As they retreated, the Zarkans pressed hard, but the Varinthians fought fiercely to protect their princess. Serafina felt the weight of her people's hopes on her shoulders. They'd reached the palace, quickly barricading the doors behind them. Breathless and battered, Serafina glanced at Alex, who was scanning the room. "We need a new plan," he said, his brow furrowed with worry. "If they breach these doors, we won't last long." Serafina nodded, her mind racing. "We must create a distraction," she said. "If we can draw their attention away from the main entrance, we might be able to escape and regroup." Alex's eyes lit up with understanding. "I can set up explosives near the main gates. It will buy us some time." Serafina felt a surge of hope. "Do it. We'll hold them off as long as we can." With a nod, Alex dashed out, maneuvering through the chaotic palace corridors. Serafina gathered her guards. "We need to be ready. We will fight to the end." The guards nodded, determination shining in their eyes. Moments later, the Zarkans began to batter down the doors. The sound echoed ominously in the grand hall, filling Serafina's heart with dread. "Brace yourselves," she shouted, gripping her sword tightly. "We will defend our home." As the doors splintered under the force of the Zarkan soldiers, Serafina prepared to lead her people into battle once more. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a wall of resolve against the encroaching darkness. Suddenly, the doors exploded open, and a swarm of Zarkan soldiers poured in. Serafina led the charge, her sword slicing through the air as she fought with everything she had. Alex returned just in time, detonating the explosives he had set near the gates. A deafening roar filled the hall as the blast created a massive distraction. Smoke and debris filled the air, disorienting the Zarkan forces. Serafina seized the moment. "Now, push forward," she commanded, leading her fighters into the chaos. The Varinthians charged into the smoke, using the confusion to their advantage. Serafina felt a renewed strength surge through her. They fought like never before, driven by their desire to protect their home and their newfound bond with Alex. As the battle raged on, Serafina realized that they were not just fighting for survival, but also for the hope of a brighter future. Together, they could face any challenge. And with Alex by her side, she felt a spark of confidence that maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tide of this battle. The turning point. The smoke from the explosion hung thick in the air, wrapping around Princess Serafina and her warriors like a shroud. Amidst the chaos, the Varinthian fighters pressed forward, their spirits renewed by the explosion that had thrown the Zarkans into disarray. The air was filled with the sounds of battle, shouting, clashing metal, and the cries of warriors. Serafina's heart raced as she moved through the haze, her sword slicing through the darkness. She could see her people rallying together, fueled by a mix of fear and determination. But the Zarkans, though momentarily stunned, were regrouping quickly. They were a formidable enemy, and Serafina knew they had to act fast. "Keep pushing," Serafina shouted to her warriors, her voice rising above the clamor. "We have to reach the armory. We need better weapons." The guards nodded, their eyes fierce with resolve. They knew that every moment counted. As they moved deeper into the palace, Serafina and her group ran into a group of Zarkan soldiers who had managed to flank them. The sight of their gleaming armor and snarling faces sent a shiver down her spine. "Stand strong," she yelled, raising her sword high. Alex, who had been fighting alongside her, sprang into action. He moved like a whirlwind, his agility surprising even the most experienced fighters among them. Together, he shouted, slicing through the enemy ranks. His confidence was contagious, urging the Verinthians to fight harder. Seraphina fought beside him, her movements synchronized with his. They were like a well-oiled machine, each strike and parry flowing seamlessly together. She had never felt so alive, so powerful. With every enemy they took down, the bond between them grew stronger, fueled by their shared purpose. As they fought, Seraphina could see that some of her warriors were struggling. The Zarkans were relentless, and their numbers seemed to multiply. "We can't hold them off forever," one of her guards yelled, panic creeping into his voice. Seraphina felt her heart sink. They needed a plan, and they needed it now. "Alex," she called, trying to make her voice heard above the din. "What do we do? We can't let them take the palace." Alex looked around, quickly assessing their options. "We need to split up," he replied urgently. "You take the armory. I'll lead a distraction toward the main entrance." Seraphina hesitated. "But what if you don't make it back?" "I will," he assured her, his gaze steady. "You're the future of your people. You have to keep fighting." There was an intensity in his eyes that ignited a fire within her. She nodded, her resolve firm. "You're right. We can't waste this chance. We'll regroup at the armory." With a determined nod, Seraphina called her remaining warriors. "We split up. Alex will create a distraction while we secure the armory. Move quickly." The fighters moved with urgency, following her lead. As they rushed down the corridors, Seraphina felt a mixture of fear and hope. Would Alex be okay? She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. They needed those weapons to stand a chance against the Zarkans. Finally, they reached the armory. Seraphina pushed open the heavy doors, revealing racks of weapons and armor. Her eyes widened at the sight. "Grab what you can," she commanded. The guards rushed inside, their hands flying over the weapons, choosing swords, shields, and even some energy-based weaponry. While the fighters armed themselves, Seraphina quickly assessed their options. "We need to make sure everyone is ready to fight," she said. "Once we're armed, we'll move to the courtyard and help Alex." Just as they finished equipping themselves, the walls shook with the force of the Zarkan forces pounding on the palace doors. Seraphina felt a rush of adrenaline. "We have to hurry," she yelled, leading the group back toward the main hall. As they burst into the courtyard, Seraphina's heart sank. The scene before her was chaotic. Alex was engaging multiple Zarkan soldiers, his movements fluid and precise, but he was clearly outnumbered. The Zarkan forces were relentless, pushing forward with an intensity that made her blood run cold. "Alex," Seraphina shouted, desperation lacing her voice. She could see him glancing back, eyes wide with recognition as he spotted her. "Seraphina, get your people to the barricade," he yelled, fighting fiercely as he spoke. "We can't let them breach the courtyard." Her warriors rallied behind her, and they charged into the fray. The clash of weapons and the roar of battle filled the air once more as they joined Alex in the fight. "On my count," Seraphina called to her fighters. 1, 2, 3, now." They surged forward together, launching a coordinated attack against the Zarkan soldiers. The tide of battle began to turn as the Verinthian fighters fought with renewed strength. "Push them back," Alex shouted, swinging his weapon with precision. Together, they fought like a united front, striking down the Zarkans one by one. The adrenaline surged through Seraphina, fueling her movements. Just as they seemed to gain the upper hand, a deafening roar echoed from above. Seraphina glanced up to see a massive Zarkan warship hovering over the palace, its weapons charging. Panic washed over her, but she quickly shook it off. They couldn't let fear control them now. "Everyone, to the barricades," Seraphina ordered, her voice steady. "We need to protect the palace at all costs." As they scrambled to position themselves, Alex shouted, "I'll take care of the ship. You focus on the ground troops." Without waiting for a response, he sprinted toward a nearby building, searching for a vantage point. Serafina and her warriors took up defensive positions, their hearts racing. The Zarkans were closing in, but they would not falter. With each strike, Serafina felt her connection with her people deepen. They fought not just for survival, but for a future, for hope, and for each other. As the warship prepared to fire, Alex climbed to the roof, positioning himself for a shot. Serafina held her breath, praying that he would succeed. He had come to their aid, and now it was her turn to protect him and her people. With a determined heart, Serafina led her warriors into the fray, ready to face whatever came next. The battle for Varenthia was far from over, and she would not let her people down. Together, they would fight, and together, they would prevail. The price of sacrifice. The tension in the air was palpable as Serafina and her warriors braced for the onslaught of Zarkan soldiers. They had fought hard to reach this moment, but now, the weight of the battle pressed heavily on their shoulders. The Zarkan warship loomed ominously overhead, its weapons primed and ready to unleash destruction. "Hold the line," Serafina shouted, gripping her sword tightly. Her heart raced as she scanned the battlefield, searching for any signs of weakness in the Zarkan ranks. The soldiers surged forward, their snarls echoing in the courtyard, but the Varenthians stood firm, a wall of defiance against the incoming tide. Suddenly, a brilliant beam of energy shot down from the warship, striking the ground just a few meters away. The explosion rocked the courtyard, sending debris flying and knocking Serafina off her feet. Dazed, she scrambled to regain her composure, her heart pounding as she looked around for her warriors. "Get back. Form a defensive circle," she ordered, her voice strained but commanding. As the dust settled, Serafina's warriors gathered around her, fear evident in their eyes. But there was something else, determination. They were ready to fight, ready to protect their home. Meanwhile, Alex had reached the rooftop of a nearby building, his breath coming in sharp gasps. The Zarkan warship hovered menacingly, and he could see the soldiers below, prepared to charge at Serafina's group. He knew he had to act quickly. With precision, he aimed his weapon at the ship's weak point, a small panel that seemed vulnerable to attack. "Come on, just a little closer," he murmured to himself, focusing on the target. As the warship turned slightly, he took a deep breath and pulled the trigger. A powerful shot rang out, and the blast hit the panel directly. Sparks flew, and for a moment, the ship faltered, its engines sputtering. "Got you," Alex shouted, a sense of triumph flooding his veins. But his victory was short-lived. The warship's retaliation was swift. It unleashed another energy beam, this time directly targeting Alex's position. He barely had time to react as the ground beneath him erupted in flames. Serafina's heart sank as she saw the explosion from the corner of her eye. "Alex," she screamed, her voice choked with fear. Without thinking, she broke away from her formation, rushing toward the building where he had taken cover. "Stay with your group," one of her guards yelled, but she could not ignore the bond they had formed. She had to know if he was okay. As she ran, the sounds of battle surrounded her, the cries of warriors and the blasts of energy weapons echoing in her ears. When she reached the building, the scene was chaotic. Smoke filled the air, and debris was scattered everywhere. "Alex," she called, searching desperately through the wreckage. Her heart raced as panic set in. What if he was hurt? What if he was gone? Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, she spotted a movement amid the rubble. "Alex," she shouted, rushing forward. He lay half-buried beneath a fallen beam, his face smudged with dirt and blood. Relief washed over her, but it quickly turned to horror as she saw his arm bent at an unnatural angle. "I'm okay," he gasped, trying to reassure her. Just a little stuck." "Hang on," Serafina urged, grabbing the beam and straining to lift it. The weight was heavy, but she couldn't let fear stop her. She focused on his face, his eyes filled with pain yet still sparkling with determination. With a final heave, she managed to shift the beam just enough for him to pull his arm free. "Got it." he exclaimed, wincing as he moved. But before he could rise, the ground shook again, and they both looked up to see more Zarkan soldiers advancing toward them. "We have to go," Serafina yelled, pulling him to his feet. "Can you stand?" "Yeah, I think so," Alex replied, though it was clear he was in pain. He stumbled slightly, but she quickly steadied him. "We need to get back to your people." As they turned to make their way back, the Zarkan soldiers closed in, their snarls growing louder. Serafina felt a surge of anger. "We can't let them take us," she declared, her voice fierce. They had fought too hard to lose now. With her sword in hand, she faced the approaching soldiers. "We fight together," she said to Alex, who nodded despite his injuries. "No matter what." The Zarkans charged, their eyes filled with malice. Serafina fought fiercely, her blade moving in a deadly dance. Every swing and thrust was fueled by a mix of desperation and courage. She could feel Alex beside her, fighting through the pain, and it gave her strength. But the Zarkans were relentless. They pushed forward, overwhelming Serafina and Alex with their numbers. Just when it seemed they might be overrun, Serafina spotted her remaining warriors rushing to their aid. "Together," she shouted, rallying her people. The Varinthian fighters surged forward, their loyalty to Serafina igniting a fierce resistance. They fought as one, pushing back against the Zarkan wave. Alex, despite his injuries, was a whirlwind of movement, defending Serafina's flank. She admired his spirit even as worry clawed at her heart. Then, as the battle raged on, Serafina felt a jolt of dread. She glanced back at the Zarkan warship, which had stabilized and was preparing to fire again. "Alex," she shouted, fear creeping into her voice. "We need to end this now." With renewed determination, she led her warriors in a final charge toward the Zarkans. "For Varenthia," she cried, and they surged forward, hearts united. The clash of swords and the cries of battle filled the air as they fought. Serafina felt alive, her heart pounding with the rhythm of war. But deep down, she knew they were fighting for more than just survival. They were fighting for each other, for hope, and for a future free from tyranny. As they clashed with the Zarkan soldiers, the warship above continued to loom ominously, ready to unleash its wrath. Serafina felt the weight of their fight pressing down on her. The battle was fierce, but she refused to back down. Together, they would face whatever came next, no matter the cost. The humans' last stand. The fierce battle raged on, and the courtyard echoed with the sounds of clashing weapons and the cries of warriors. Serafina fought alongside her people, her sword slicing through the air as she pushed back against the relentless Zarkan soldiers. But with each passing moment, it became clearer that they were outnumbered, and the weight of the situation bore down heavily on her shoulders. Amidst the chaos, Alex struggled to keep up, his injuries taking a toll on his strength. The adrenaline coursing through him helped him fight, but he could feel his body tiring. Serafina caught a glimpse of him, grimacing as he swung his weapon, and her heart tightened. He had risked everything to save her, and now he was fighting to protect her home. "Alex," Serafina called out, trying to reach him through the fray. "Stay close. We can't lose each other." He nodded, his face set in determination. "I won't leave your side," he shouted back, though his voice strained under the weight of his exhaustion. As the Zarkans pressed their attack, Serafina's warriors fought valiantly, but the tide was turning against them. Zarkan soldiers swarmed from every direction, their snarls filling the air as they pushed deeper into the courtyard. She could see the fear in her warriors' eyes, the doubt creeping in as they faced the overwhelming force. Just then, a powerful roar erupted from the Zarkan warship above. The enormous ship unleashed a volley of energy beams, illuminating the darkening sky. One beam struck near the center of the courtyard, sending a shockwave that knocked several Varinthian soldiers off their feet. Serafina stumbled, her footing lost, but she quickly regained her balance. "Form a line," she shouted, desperation creeping into her voice. "We can't let them break us." Her warriors rallied around her, their resolve reignited. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a wall of bravery against the encroaching darkness. But Serafina knew that they needed more than just bravery. "We need a plan," she murmured, her mind racing. She scanned the battlefield, her heart pounding as she searched for a way to turn the tide. Alex, still fighting fiercely, caught her eye. "What do we do?" he asked, breathing heavily. "We can't hold them off much longer." Serafina took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "If we can disable the warship, it will weaken their forces significantly. But we need to distract them first," she said, formulating a plan. "I'll lead a charge to draw their attention. You can find a way to get to that building over there." She pointed to a crumbling structure on the outskirts of the courtyard. "Are you sure you can handle it?" Alex asked, concern etched on his face. "I have to," she replied, her voice firm. "We can't let them win. Not now." With a determined nod, she stepped forward, raising her sword high. "Warriors of Varenthia, we fight not just for ourselves, but for our future, for our freedom. Let's show these invaders what we are made of." The Varenthian warriors responded with a roar, their spirits lifted by her words. Serafina could see the fire in their eyes, the unwavering courage that had brought them this far. With a final glance at Alex, she charged into the fray, her sword gleaming in the fading light. As she engaged the Zarkan soldiers, she fought with everything she had. Every swing of her sword was a testament to her determination. She felt the adrenaline surge through her, each victory against the enemy fueling her spirit. But she could feel the pressure mounting. The Zarkan soldiers were relentless, and she was beginning to tire. Meanwhile, Alex made his way toward the building, dodging Zarkan blasts and debris. His heart raced as he navigated through the chaos, keeping his focus on the crumbling structure. He could see the faint outline of an entrance and pushed himself harder, ignoring the pain that radiated from his arm. Inside the building, the air was thick with dust and debris. He quickly scanned the interior, searching for anything he could use to his advantage. As he moved deeper, he stumbled upon a stash of old Varenthian weapons, long forgotten but still powerful. His heart raced with hope as he grabbed a heavy energy rifle, its weight reassuring in his hands. With renewed determination, Alex made his way back outside, ready to help Serafina and her warriors. He raised the rifle, taking aim at the Zarkan warship. His hands trembled slightly, but he steadied himself, focusing on the task at hand. He spotted a small panel on the ship's side, a potential weak point. "Come on, just a little closer," he muttered, trying to ignore the chaos around him. Just then, a group of Zarkan soldiers broke away from the main fight, heading straight for him. "Not today," Alex said through gritted teeth. He pulled the trigger, and the energy beam shot forth, striking true. The Zarkans fell, but he knew he had little time. He had to get that shot off before the warship unleashed its full fury. As Serafina fought valiantly against the Zarkans, she felt a rush of hope when she spotted Alex. "Alex, get to the side of the ship," she shouted, her voice rising above the din of battle. "You can do this." With a fierce determination, Alex maneuvered around the courtyard, avoiding enemy fire. He reached a vantage point, the warship looming before him. He took a deep breath, steadying his hands as he focused on the weak panel. "Now or never," he whispered, pulling the trigger again. The blast hit the panel directly, and for a moment, nothing happened. But then, a series of explosions erupted from the ship, shaking the ground beneath him. "Yes," he shouted, exhilaration flooding through him. He watched as the warship trembled, the Zarkan soldiers momentarily distracted. "Now's our chance," Serafina cried, rallying her warriors. They surged forward, pressing their advantage, while the Zarkan forces struggled to regroup. But as the battle continued, Serafina felt an uneasy tension in the air. The warship, despite the damage, was preparing to retaliate. She could sense that this was not over yet. The fight was just beginning. and they would have to dig deeper than ever before to survive. Stay strong, she urged her warriors, determination blazing in her heart. For Varenthia, for our freedom. Together, they charged into the fray, ready to face whatever came next. The ultimate sacrifice. As the battle raged on, Seraphina's heart pounded in her chest. The Zarkan warship was still operational despite the damage Alex had inflicted. A sense of urgency filled the air as the Zarkans regrouped and prepared for a counterattack. Seraphina could see the determination on the faces of her warriors, but she knew they were running out of time. "Alex," she shouted, scanning the courtyard for him. She spotted him near the building, his energy rifle still smoking from the last shot. He was reloading, but she could see the strain on his face. He had fought bravely, but he wouldn't be able to hold out much longer against the Zarkan forces. "I'm here," he replied, his voice strained but resolute. He rushed to her side, determination shining in his eyes. "What's the plan?" Seraphina took a deep breath, trying to think quickly. "We need to disable the warship for good. If it continues to fire on us, we won't stand a chance. I have an idea, but it's risky." "Tell me what to do," he said, ready to follow her lead. She explained her plan, knowing it was dangerous but feeling it was their only hope. "We need to get inside the warship. If we can find its power core, we can overload it. But we'll have to create a diversion to draw the Zarkans away from the entrance." Alex nodded, his expression serious. "I'm in. Let's do this." As they prepared, Seraphina felt the weight of her decision. If they were going to succeed, they might not both make it out alive. But the thought of her people losing their home fueled her resolve. She would not let their sacrifice be in vain. "Warriors of Varenthia," she called out, gathering her remaining forces, "we will strike at the heart of our enemy. Follow me, and together we will reclaim our freedom." Her warriors responded with a roar, their spirits lifted by her words. With Alex by her side, they charged toward the warship, dodging Zarkan blasts as they fought their way through the courtyard. The Zarkan soldiers, momentarily caught off guard by their sudden assault, faltered for just a moment. "Now," Seraphina shouted, leading her warriors toward the warship's entrance. As they reached the base of the massive ship, Alex noticed several Zarkan soldiers converging on their position. "Cover me," he yelled, taking up a defensive position as Seraphina pressed forward. With her sword gleaming, she engaged the Zarkan soldiers, her movements graceful yet fierce. Each strike was filled with the hope of her people and the desire for freedom. But as the fighting intensified, Seraphina could feel the tide turning against them. Zarkan reinforcements arrived, and the number of enemy soldiers began to swell once again. "We need to hurry," she shouted to Alex, her voice rising above the chaos. Alex, still holding his ground, nodded. "I'll cover you. Get inside." He aimed his rifle at the incoming Zarkans, firing off a series of shots that took down several soldiers. But he knew he couldn't hold them back forever. Seraphina took a deep breath and dashed toward the entrance of the warship. As she crossed the threshold, she felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of machinery and energy. The faint hum of the warship's systems resonated around her, filling her with urgency. "Where is the power core?" she murmured, scanning the dimly lit corridors. Meanwhile, outside, Alex continued to fight bravely, but he could see that the Zarkan soldiers were closing in, their numbers overwhelming. "Seraphina," he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "We need to finish this now." "I'm looking," she called back, her heart racing, as she moved through the darkened hallways. Just then, she spotted a glowing door at the end of a corridor. It pulsed with energy, and she instinctively knew it led to the power core. "There," she shouted, rushing toward it. But as she approached the door, she heard a rumble and saw a group of Zarkan soldiers flanking her. They had found her. Panic surged through her, but she quickly pushed it aside. "I have to get to that core," she thought, focusing on the task at hand. With a swift motion, she burst through the door, entering a large chamber filled with energy conduits and glowing machinery. In the center of the room, a massive sphere pulsed with bright energy. This was the power core. Now how do I overload this? She wondered, her mind racing. As she examined the core, she noticed a control panel on the side, filled with buttons and switches. Outside, Alex fought valiantly, but the Zarkan soldiers were relentless. He could see them closing in, and he knew he had to buy Serafina more time. I won't let them take her, he vowed, firing off rounds as he held his ground. Suddenly, a Zarkan soldier lunged at him, knocking the rifle from his hands. They grappled, and Alex felt the weight of the enemy bearing down on him. With a surge of adrenaline, he pushed the soldier away and grabbed a fallen weapon. He stood firm, ready to defend the entrance to the warship. Back inside, Serafina worked frantically at the control panel, her hands moving quickly over the buttons. Come on, she urged as she flipped switches and pressed buttons. The room filled with a low hum as the power core began to respond. Suddenly, an alarm blared, and warning lights flashed. No, she exclaimed. I need more time. Just then, a voice echoed behind her. You think you can stop us, Princess? A Zarkan commander stood in the doorway, a sinister grin on his face. Serafina turned, her heart racing. I won't let you destroy my people, she declared, raising her sword. Foolish human, the commander sneered, advancing toward her. You cannot win. As they clashed, Serafina felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She fought fiercely, each strike filled with determination. But the commander was strong, and she could feel her energy waning. Outside, Alex was still fighting, but he was beginning to tire. He could see Serafina struggle through the doorway. I have to help her, he thought desperately. With a burst of strength, he pushed forward, taking down Zarkan soldiers as he fought his way inside the warship. He saw Serafina engaged in battle and knew he had to act fast. Serafina, he shouted, drawing the commander's attention. Alex, she replied, her voice strained but filled with relief. In that moment, Alex rushed toward her, his determination reignited. I'm here. Let's finish this together. With newfound strength, Serafina and Alex fought side by side against the commander. Each strike they made was a testament to their bond and their resolve to protect their people. Finally, in a swift motion, Serafina feigned an attack, drawing the commander's guard down. Now, she shouted, and Alex took the chance. With a powerful strike, he knocked the commander off balance, giving Serafina the opening she needed. With one final decisive blow, she plunged her sword into the commander's chest. The Zarkan soldier fell to the ground, and they both stood panting, their hearts racing. Now let's overload this core, Alex urged, moving toward the control panel. Together, they worked frantically, pressing buttons and flipping switches until the core began to glow brighter and brighter. Get back, Serafina shouted as the chamber filled with light. They dashed toward the exit, narrowly escaping the chamber as a massive explosion rocked the warship. The force of the blast propelled them forward, and they hit the ground just outside the entrance. The warship erupted behind them, a brilliant explosion lighting up the night sky. As the dust settled, Serafina looked around, her heart racing. The Zarkan soldiers were in chaos, their command structure shattered. They had done it. Is it over? Alex panted, breathless as he took her hand. Yes, Serafina replied, tears of relief streaming down her face. We did it. As they embraced, they felt the warmth of victory wash over them. They had fought for their people and won against all odds. Together, they had proven that love, sacrifice, and courage could overcome even the darkest of foes. In that moment, they knew they were forever bound by the battles they had fought and the sacrifices they had made. And as the sun began to rise on the horizon, they felt a sense of hope for a new beginning, a brighter future for Varanthia, united by their strength and resilience.